July 1st, 1941. The Brooklyn Dodgers are up against the Phillies at Ebbets Field. The world is months away from Pearl Harbor, years away from the conclusion of World War II. And so, for a brief moment that summer, America is at peace and, for the first time in history, gathers around a new technology called television. Before the pitch is thrown at the first televised baseball game in America, the country has served its first TV commercial from the Bulova Watch Company. A 10-second spot with an image of a watch overlaying a map of the USA. The announcer chimes in,
"America runs on Bulova time."
Founded in 1875, Bulova was a savvy company when it came to advertising. Bulova paid under $9 to run the spot. Today, the company has a net worth of over $164 million. TV advertising is one of the more expensive but effective marketing choices for business owners that want to create awareness for their brand. But within the legal profession, advertising on TV is a sore spot. According to a recent ABA survey of lawyers who themselves are actively advertising their firms, 78% believe that public perception of the legal profession is being damaged by lawyers that choose to advertise on TV. How is it possible that lawyers believe in advertising and marketing as a way to grow their business and yet have an overwhelming aversion to it? Seems like we're shocked to discover that there's actually gambling happening in the casino, or that there's sales involved in advertising. Well, we wanted to better understand the connections between advertising, marketing, and public perception of the legal profession. That's what we're aiming to do today on LAWsome. Ask the question, does a good lawyer need a commercial? Let's roll.
LAWsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by Consultwebs.
Welcome back to LAWsome, the only podcast for law firms that eats while swimming. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community on the latest in personal and professional development. I'm Jake Sanders, your co-host, and with me is Paul Julius. And we have a special episode today, and I wanted to tell you about it. Paul and I are marketers. We've worked with hundreds of law firms over our career, helping them market their practices, writing and shooting TV ads, creating websites, running Google AdWords and social media campaigns. And we keep running into this conflict between advertising and marketing. Lawyers want to grow their business, but the concepts of professionalism or protecting public perception of lawyers can get in the way of creating effective marketing and advertising campaigns. So we wanted to dedicate a show that specifically talks about this confluence, particularly in regards to TV advertising and lawyers. So first, let's discuss what an advertisement actually is.
And now, a very special episode of LAWsome.
We're starting with this question, what an ad is. When people are thinking of advertising, they think it is marketing, but it's like an aspect of marketing, right, Paul?
It's a tool. It's a piece of your marketing. It's what you use to drive your marketing, I think, or a focus of a marketing campaign. And I think it's interesting that, back, in the 50s and 60s, the golden era, I guess, of advertising agencies, you would have an ad campaign. They didn't really refer to it as marketing because for them it was magazines and TV and billboards, radio.
Interesting.
And that's different.
Yeah, well, because there's so many places to advertise, it's hard to tell where you're going to. I just think it's an important distinction, and we can't get advertising and the activity of advertising confused with marketing. So marketing is about how you take whatever your product or service to the actual marketplace, like how you deliver the message. And advertising is a way to deliver the message.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, think of it this way: if we're going to look at like a classic one, let's look at Mr. Whipple.
Perfect.
Let's talk toilet paper. So the ad is Mr. Whipple. Please don't squeeze a Charmin. But the marketing is to say, okay, well, we know we want to run this to women between a certain age. And at that time, they weren't necessarily in the workforce, so we're going to do it during soap operas. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's your marketing campaign is we want to target these people during this time. And the advertising is the message.
What
good advertising is bringing the marketing principles of your product or service to a target audience and then grabbing their attention and kind of dominating a space inside of their head. Effective advertising is basically getting to the real estate inside of someone's head, which is very hard to be a part. It's hard to be top of mind. It's hard to be aware of things. And the way you do it is you see things over and over and over, or you are given something to think about. And so TV and advertisements are these ways for marketers to get access to what's inside of your head. And so they use jingles and hooks and earworms and, like just that don't squeeze the Charmin, just that kind of annoying thing, like what's going on here. That was wildly effective for Charmin. I mean, that the year they ran that campaign, I mean, they outsold themselves by like 16 times. I mean, in 1978, people knew Mr. Whipple more than they knew Jimmy Carter. He was like, that's just how that happens. So you can't say it's effective because it works.
And I think it's also interesting that they hated him.
which is part and parcel of this whole episode, because if we're going to talk about lawyer ads specifically, I don't know why I'm doing it, but I'm on Reddit looking for information, and these things, these threads came up where they were totally hating the lawyers, but they said that they would call this guy if they were ever in an accident. They would call this person. So, and it's weird because you're at the toilet paper aisle. I'm faced with tens of choices. So I'm going to think of something that first comes to my mind. What was the thing that I've most recently seen? Oh, it's Mr. Whipple. Don't squeeze the Charmin. That's soft. That's funny. I hate that ad. Anyway, it's on sale. Let's get it.
Or is it that you're looking around at everything and you're tens of toilet paper options, and the one that sticks out is the Charmin. There's that one Whipple always is squeezing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Why is this advertising effective? It's not. And a lot of the items that or the examples you kind of brought up are negative. Like Whipple was a success, but it was because it was this reviled figure. And I think too, a lot of these things that you're talking about, like these lawyer ads and stuff like that, people always look at it in a negative thing, but at a baseline, advertising is effective if you back up and look at some of these other things. Like look at these iconic brands. You've got Nike, Just Do It, Got Milk. All these things that I mean have companies are pouring money into. Obviously, it's effective, but it's the advertising itself, I think, that we're looking at and saying, well, is every advertising thing effective? I mean, why? Obviously things flop. I'm sure there's brands that have run commercials and then have just vanished.
Oh, yeah.
But going back to the history of it, before there was all these outlets, before there was the internet, you had to have a well-crafted message. And I think that's why even now stuff like Just Do It still works, because it's so powerful. And that's how advertising can be effective, is that you're it's not only repetition, but you're creating a connection.
It's also about creating a connection, but it's also about focusing on a certain segment of the population that needs to know about your product or service.
That's actually a really good thing you bring up. So maybe because this Mr. Whipple guy was reviled because he was an archetype of something that audience hated. I hate having someone tell me not to do something, particularly when it's this kind of greasy man, you know what I mean? Like it was so, like the whole audience was unified in their hatred of him. Like, I'm going to buy this Charmin and squeeze it just to spite you.
But notice how the message and the medium, regardless of how it's connected, drove the business and drove revenue. And in some way, I mean, we're talking about kind of psychological cognitive biases that advertisers are using, like an unfinished song, or you just sing something up until the point and then everyone's like, oh, please finish the joke, or, it's like you kind of leave these hooks or, create these characters. But so Luke Sullivan, we're talking, specifically about, hey, Whipple, squeeze this. Luke Sullivan is, a hero to me and Paul. He's an advertising guy, been in the business for, 30, 40 years. But he wrote this book about advertising because he was so confused about Mr. Whipple in specific, because he said, this is the most annoying commercial I've ever seen. And yet this annoying commercial managed to make Charmin millions of dollars. And I mean, it's the number one selling brand for almost 20, 30 years. And they used that same commercial for 20 years. They ran the same Mr. Whipple thing. And it's because it was working. And it feels like it doesn't work for us. I just don't like that ad. But then you look in your closet and there's some Charmin there. I think that's where the confluence is that advertising works, and you have to separate certain things around perception to really get at the heart of what you're trying to do with advertising and what your marketing is trying to accomplish. Because if there's business goals that get accomplished by it, then that is effective. That is a well-performing marketing campaign supported by an advertisement, and that's where I think people kind of fall off. They don't want to be perceived as this or that, but they're not getting the idea of advertising and grabbing people's attention and making sure they're aware of this.
Well, and that's, well said. And I think that's the thing, is that the ad isn't going to make everyone happy. And it's not ever, unless you're a larger, even if you look at Nike, right? Even if you look at Nike, like their running shoe ads are not targeted towards basketball players. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of the thing, is that you're just trying to hit your target market there. And I think, lawyer ads, a lot of times, we've looked at these different bar association surveys that say, oh, we have such a negative perception and we hate these ads, and it's just feeding in on this thing. But the reality of it is lawyers aren't making these ads for other lawyers.
Oh man. Oh, that's huge. So I think we're touching on, we're going to head into advertising specifically in regards to the legal community, because I think we covered what advertising is, how that kind of the message and the medium kind of play and that get confused. How are these annoying ads? Are they actually doing something more than just bothering everyone else in the legal profession? So let's go to the next segment.
Stay tuned as we continue on a very special episode of LAWsome.
Lawyers are considering advertising as a marketing option. Why would they want to consider going into advertising? TV advertising, it has increasingly become very expensive. So it started cheap, but even at that time, it is considered pricey. And when you realize that the average American watches at least 5 hours of live TV a day, the viewership drops between teenagers and young adults. But when you're talking about people who are making legal decisions for households, TV is a really, really great place to serve them.
It's not an accident that there's, no pun intended, that there's more of these ads running during daytime TV. I mean, I think everybody knows, like, turn on Judge Judy, you're going to see lawyer ads. It's going to happen. Who's that audience?
But there's a couple reasons for this. One, I think lawyers are cheap, and cheap is a wrong word, cost effective, or cost conscious. But one of the good examples that I found was Jim Adler, who's known as the Texas Hammer. He was one of the first lawyers to do TV commercials in Texas, but he's also bilingual, and he cut all of his commercials in Spanish because he knew that the main point of advertising is to get people aware of their legal rights. And people who are of lower income, maybe at home watching TV in the middle of the day, are not aware of what their legal rights are. They don't have connections to lawyers. They're not, at the country club, so they need to know that there's somebody here who's letting them know that they have rights and that there's someone who can help them fight for them. Because my dad just recently got into an accident, and he talked to one of the insurance adjusters, and he called me because he was really concerned, and he was really mad because the insurance adjuster, I mean, it's when you look at the accident report, it's obvious that it's 100% liability on, this other person. And the insurance company asked him a couple different questions. They started to split the liability. They were like, it sounds like you weren't really paying attention, And my dad was so mad. And so imagine someone who's been in an accident. They're super mad. They don't have a connection to a personal injury lawyer. They turn on the TV, and here's the Texas hammer. And he's like, these people need to be pounded. They will not leave you alone, and you need a lawyer who's going to fight for you. Instantly, my dad would call this person because, man, I just got screwed over,
Yep.
And thinking about Spanish communities, like who's getting screwed over when they go to court? Definitely, bilingual, lower income folks, they need to know that there's somebody there to help them. And why wouldn't you use TV and, get a good deal, run it on Judge Judy? I think there's a benefit to lawyers advertising on TV that is actually improving public perception of lawyers, because if there's a lawyer somewhere saying, I don't want to advertise, he's not helping, or she is not helping the general population understand their legal rights. They're just sitting on top of a legal book being like, hey, if you want it, come call me. It's going to be an expensive hour, but
Yeah. Well, I think you're saying something too here, is that, number one, unless you're like a really, really bad driver, you're not going to get into a lot of accidents. You don't have the experience dealing with an insurance company.
Sure.
These things are going to resonate. I know my wife had an accident years and years ago. She got T-boned in an intersection, and the insurance company basically said, well, you're partially at fault because you were at that intersection at that time.
In a car.
Right. Exactly. And that's the kind of thing, like, I see a lot of ads now, like people like Jim still running ads very successfully.
Totally.
I see other people, Glenn Lerner. They're a lot of what they're saying is don't get pushed around, and that resonates. And that message, they can be kind of making it a little, I don't want to say farcical, but bigger than life, by smashing something with a hammer, or something like that, like maybe playing a little light, because a lot of people understand, like, the whole injury lawyers are ambulance chasers and stuff, which I don't think is true. But it's okay to have a little self-awareness. I think it's okay to have a little fun with that, because you are still trying, to make a connection with these people in a very short period of time. But I think being there, having that thing running, during this time. Another point about the Judge, we call it the Judge Judy audience, is, if you're laid up, if you're hurt, if you're in a hospital and, you're stuck watching hospital TV network, you're not on demanding something. You only got a couple things that's on. So during the day, there's that audience too, people who are hurt.
And there, and in that article, it was, is TV advertising effective, from Calling Media? But it was fascinating, because lawyers are thinking that, hey, if you're hurt, you're at home and you're watching TV. But there's also a lot of other factors at play. But
exposure, right?
Well,
I mean, it's just exposure.
But there's an important thing. So I was a marketing director for a personal injury law firm, and our boss did a lot of TV spots. And what you don't get, and Jim Adler talks about it too, is that you're putting your reputation on the line. I'm right in front of this camera, and I'm telling people about the law and what they need and what their rights are. Lawyers don't have to do that. No one has to do that. No one needs to do that. No one needs to go on to TV. But when you do that, you're taking control of a certain segment of people's attention, and you're letting them know. And if it doesn't work, your reputation is on the line. And if it works, then they trust you because you put your reputation on the line. We ran a lot of TV spots. We got tons of calls, but it wasn't specifically for personal injury stuff. It was calls just for legal issues. These people had no one to turn to. If you need help in divorce, we don't do that. Here's some divorce lawyers that our boss trusts, and people love that, and they really, really appreciated it. And then when those people got in accidents, they came back. A couple years ago, you couldn't help me with, some tenant something, but then I got into an accident and I remembered how good you guys were. So you're not just like capturing fish, you're actually creating this wellspring of awareness that people have a lawyer that they can trust. And these people had no lawyers. They had no lawyers,
Well,
and
and I
everyone.
think,
Yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, and I think you're right on here in that, you've got this image, everybody is, especially that we see in the bar surveys that say the TV lawyers, it's the greasy ambulance chasing TV lawyer.
Oh yeah.
But I think, what you just laid out is exactly like what Jim says, and he says, just because you advertise doesn't mean you can neglect your clients.
Oh, dude. Yeah. And he says right there, continue. It says, I can go on TV and make the best commercial in the world, but if I don't provide top quality service to my clients and call them back and meet their needs in terms of professionalism, they're going to get a raw deal.
Right.
Hammer, telling it like it is.
But dude, that's the thing. And even going back to Hey Whipple, and going back to, some of the things that David Ogilvy, some of these guys, these classic advertisers, they say you will always lose trying to advertise a bad product. And if that bad product is bad service, bad legal representation, it wouldn't last. So even though it might be goofy, or people might be like, oh, you're playing to the lowest common denominator. I think when you look at it from the advertising perspective and say, okay, well, these are the people who will not have a connection to a lawyer. Like you just talked about the people that you met when you were working at your law firm, these are people who they haven't closed on a house. They never had a real estate lawyer. They don't have anybody they can call and refer to. So they're looking for other social proof, other means of referral, right? And if you don't do that, if you don't have something there, if you're not top of mind and you're not providing good service, it doesn't matter what kind of TV ad you're running.
Well, and so it brings up the idea of what the future is, because I don't know a lawyer who isn't aware that they need to market, they need to extend their network, they need to grow their business. Everyone's aware of that, but as we're thinking of the future, most people are sold on websites, but we're thinking of the TV and where it's going, and is it going to die, or is different viewership going to change viewing habits? Is that going to change the way people are using TV? And so it's weird that people have websites and they're all in on video, but everyone thinks TV is some kind of like bad thing. So now that we've heard the arguments for TV advertising for lawyers, and kind of this idea that it can create communities, and it's also another marketing opportunity, and it's just telling people about their rights, it's an awareness campaign. Coming up next, we want to talk about people who are against TV ads for lawyers and what they have to say. So that's coming up next on a very special episode of LAWsome.
Stay tuned.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
Tired of being dragged around by Google AdWords or lackluster website designs? Yeah! Are you a lawyer looking for a digital marketing company that you can trust? Yeah! Well, you need Consultwebs. Yeah! Since 1999, we've driven 1 million leads to our law firm clients. We only work with lawyers, so our designs and marketing campaigns are battle-tested. And since we've started, we've generated hundreds of millions of dollars for our clients, and we haven't even broken a sweat. Go to Consultwebs.com to learn more.
Back on LAWsome. Today we're talking about TV advertising. This is the part of the show where we talk about anti-advertising. What are the negative kind of connotations to TV lawyers? Paul, right off the bat, TV advertising on TV, it ain't cheap.
No, it's expensive.
It's very expensive.
That to me, that's one of the biggest things where, why shouldn't I advertise on TV? I mean, why? It's because it costs a lot. I mean, that's a major expense.
And in regards to digital marketing, where we're now trying to track that ROI, the return on investment for people who are putting money towards marketing, mass media is a surefire way to not be able to track that stuff. So, you're throwing money out there. If you put a specific tracking number on your TV advertisement, that's one way to do it. But then you take a hit on the brand because, if you want to use one number for all your ads, but then you want to track them, it's really hard. It's very difficult. So it's expensive. It's hard to track. I think word of mouth is still the main attraction for law firms. It's still that kind of who do you trust or who do you know? I mean, TV ads, lawyers, it kind of feels slimy. And I also think that it changes the expectations of what lawyers and law firms are capable of. When we're talking about huge settlements, I got my client $1 million. That might be true in a kind of advertising context, but when the doctors get paid, when all the specialists get paid, when the lawyers get paid, those payouts don't tend to be those big numbers. They're not giving you
taxes.
I mean, and when do you get it and how do you get it? So it can change the way people think. They think money's just flying out of firms to the tunes of hundreds of thousands of dollars, whereas I think the majority of cases are settled early, settled at a good amount where people are happy, but we're not breaking the bank. I think it can change the way people conceive about settlements. I think that could be damaging.
I think it also gives, and this is not backed up by any data or whatever, except, well, actually, maybe it is. I mean, maybe this is kind of what those ABA surveys are saying, that once you do a TV ad, once you become a TV lawyer, that's it. And there are some people who just look at that as a caricature, and it diminishes credibility. And I wouldn't hire, there's that TV lawyer. I mean, look, we're saying it right now, TV lawyer.
Yeah, it is kind of a slur. Well,
you know what I'm saying? And it's not, I'm not arguing one way or the other. All I'm saying is that, is there a certain credibility hit you have to be willing to take if you're going to be the guy on TV? And is that worth it? Can you still get those settlements? Does being on TV actually preclude you from getting that stuff? I mean, we've got, here in Illinois, we've got Salvi Law.
Yeah.
They've received the $148 million settlement.
Oh yeah.
They don't do any TV advertising. The question is, if they did TV advertising, would that have happened? Would the people looking for that representation called a TV lawyer?
As the research was happening for this episode, I found myself on Reddit. And if you're curious about what humanity has to offer, head over to Reddit.
The worst humanity has to offer. No, I'm kidding. I love Reddit.
There's it's good, but there are some kind of runaway opinion vehicles. So the question was, if lawyers have so much money, why do their TV ads suck? And this person said lawyers that advertise don't make money, that they actually need the work. He says, I'm an attorney working at a prestigious law firm and have never seen us issue any sort of advertising or marketing. Why? We don't need to. We decide who we represent. So he's talking about, I think that maybe he doesn't understand marketing, because I'm pretty sure these people have a website. I'm pretty sure that law firm has a website. So people are thinking that they're not advertising, are gladly on Facebook, are gladly on Twitter. This dude's on Reddit talking about his law firm. That's sort of an advertising in itself.
Bingo.
So I think a lot of people are against it, but those people understand that they still need to bring awareness of their practice to the audience, the mass audience. And if that happens through word of mouth and it happens through just slanging that good law, that's great. And I think that that's important.
I think the guy has a point. I mean, but look right here. Like if it's on the internet, so there's a 50% chance of it being real. Right. Yeah, right. Exactly. But if this is it, I mean, let's look at this and say, well, here's kind of a peer review right there on Reddit saying, I don't advertise because I don't have to. Read between the lines here, and he's saying it's desperate. If you're doing that, you're desperate. You're playing to the lowest common denominator. You're shooting the fish in the barrel. You're not reaching for the stars. You're not good enough to not advertise on TV. That's what this guy is saying.
But he's also saying, I don't need to even entertain the thought. because there's certain practices within the law, like professional liability defense, contract law, intellectual property. People working in big law firms, they don't need to advertise. And I think that they feel when they say, "Oh, I'm a lawyer." "Oh, you're like one of those ambulance chasers." No, I'm just do contract law. How many times do you have to correct someone and get them off of that idea? That can be kind of tiring. So I could see where these people are coming from. I think that advertising is a vehicle for marketing. People are aware of good advertising principles, even if they don't think that they're doing advertising. I think that, this prestigious law firm that won't deign or, lower its reputation to do TV advertisement, I bet that they have a serious experience management process where they make sure everybody gets the same, service, and that, these people are doing their jobs. Well, that's kind of moderating and making sure an experience happens with your brand, which is marketing. Now, if you just told more people about it at one time, that would be called advertising. I think maybe it's a conception on the lawyer side that can help them realize advertising is a choice. And you're right, man. People who are choosing to do that advertising are taking a big risk with their reputation.
Well, and a financial risk.
Right.
And I think something you just said is interesting, that you were talking about good advertising principles.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds to me like a lot of what's going on here is people are saying that TV advertising as itself is not a good advertising principle. That's what the industry is saying. And that's why you see these surveys that say we have this negative perception from TV ads, when there are in reality very few, law firms that are actually running TV ads.
Oh yeah. And well said. And everyone in that American Bar Association survey where they asked people who advertised, 87% of the people had websites. So they were at least conscious of the fact that they needed to dust themselves off, get a nice headshot, type some really compelling copy that lets people know that they are the most trusted advisor ever. So they knew that they needed to kind of get the pony out, but they didn't want to do the whole show, So I think there's an option for lawyers to maybe relieve themselves of trying to change the way people publicly perceive them through attacking TV lawyers. And that maybe there's an opportunity for us to think of advertising, especially for law firms, in a different light that could actually maybe make everybody, all the boats rise,
Well, I think you're right. And there is definitely that aspect of it too, that there are some ads where, they're so bad. There has to be a level of self-awareness. Like, it has to be purposely that bad. Right.
Yes.
And I think that's what a lot of people think of, when they're looking at TV advertising commercials, is the bad ones. That's
Right.
what I remember. I remember, this guy talking in a monotone, staring blankly at the screen, talking about millions of dollars and don't wait to call. From my perspective, that may not be the best representation of, my graduating class from Harvard Law.
Yeah, everyone's just crying into their diplomas, just blowing their nose on their bar exams. Like, oh, geez. Well, but go back to Mr. Whipple. Like there's somebody who wanted to. We're a toilet paper company, and we don't need to advertise. People know the wipes that we give are the best wipes. So don't even question it. And then here comes Mr. Whipple with an annoying ad, something that bothers us. They're kind of, bringing up certain aspects of toilet paper that aren't necessarily true to my brand of toilet paper. But now the consciousness of America is built on the annoying presence of Mr. Whipple inside of their minds. And so I think as we head towards the end of this episode, we need to kind of let's bring it all together. Does advertising need to be bothersome? Does it need to be this annoying kitschy thing that grabs your attention. To stand out in a kind of crowded marketplace, how else would you get someone's attention? Because advertising is an attention-grabbing vehicle that then you can impart some marketing wisdom within. And so I think, like, if we're talking about critiques of TV lawyers, let's just go back to Jim Adler. And, they asked him in this Biz Journal article, do you have any critiques of your commercials? And he says, oh, lots. There's an age-old issue of professionalism in business. How does a lawyer remain professional and yet get business? A long time ago, I was a young lawyer and I had 4 kids, and I had an issue of how I was going to put bread on the table. And that's where business intersects with professionalism. The theory behind lawyer advertising, and he's continuing, is to inform people of their legal rights. People aren't educated to what their rights are, and there's a big mystery about the law. It's sad. People just don't know their legal rights. Of course, if they did, I'd be out of a job. But going back to a previous episode, we had Jillian Hadfield on. She said, like 91% of people who had a simple arbitration clause in front of them couldn't understand if that meant that they could take the brand to court. They didn't understand what the main point of an arbitration clause was. People are so unaware of legal recourses and legal rights because we're just focused on whatever's on Netflix or whatever's cheap on sale. It's something that the TV lawyers are at least doing to tell people, hey, if you feel like you've been wronged, you have the option to do something about it. And I forget what the number is, crazy, but like 40% of people who could use legal counseling don't get it. They just don't call a lawyer. So it doesn't even matter if you have an ad or you have a really, really good website. A lot of people who have legitimate cases that could totally be taken all the way to the end zone don't find lawyers. Why? It's because they don't know that it's possible. They don't know that it's an option. So a TV lawyer who's out there saying you have rights is doing more for legal perception and the idea that legality is everyone's right. It's a public thing for you to use in case you feel like you've been wronged. Most people just think they don't have it. Suck it up, cupcake. Sorry. So there's something about TV advertising that's positive to me in some kind of respect.
Well, I get what you're saying, but I don't know that I necessarily agree with it 100%. But the theory of it, I think I dig.
Right.
But the reality of it is, if I've seen a law firm here in Chicago that does TV advertising, and they do it in a pretty classy way. And they basically they take a very kind of folksy approach, talking very one-on-one, not with their arms folded in front of a bookcase,
right.
Holding a gavel kind of thing.
Yeah, with the scales of justice. Yeah.
It's a little more person to person. And I think that is maybe the outlier, because what I see for the most part isn't people who are saying, if you've been in a car accident, you don't have to just take the insurance company at face value. We can help you out. There's some questions you can ask, blah, blah, blah.
It ain't that.
They're saying, there's strobe lights and flash pots and smoke. And they're like, people who get a lawyer get 3 times the settlement amount. You know what I'm saying?
Here's a question. As a marketing decision, as a sales option, as a way to grow your business, is that strobe light craziness effective for that law firm?
Are you causing more damage, though? That's what I'm saying. Are you excluding yourself from the serious case, the quote serious cases, by having strobe lights and?
But that's why I think, I did a survey on Twitter, and I said, what TV law firms who, advertise, what do you think they are? Are they high quantity, high quality? Or you think they're out of touch? And everyone said that they are high quantity law firms. Is that you are on TV to elicit a large amount of awareness, to take large parts of the marketplace and go through it and find what you can. There's going to be good cases. There's going to be bad cases. But to say that someone who just maybe lost a loved one, you know, in a semi-truck trailer thing, and they're hiding the evidence. They're not going to let it, you know, it's headed into spoliation. You know, they're not letting the investigators touch it. The insurance company's stonewalling you. This person is completely emotional. And when they see the strobe lights and they see someone saying, I'm going to fight for you, they're like, this is it. They're not making a logical decision. There might be a better law firm out there for them. But when they see that emotional trigger, that's advertising is an emotional response. And we are making marketing decisions thinking that people are acting logical. And they aren't. People do not make logical decisions. We go against our best interest. Take a look at the country. You know, some people are voting way against their best interests, and they just don't quite conceive of what's going on because they're making emotional decisions. It's not rational. So when you're making a marketing decision to, you know, advertise someone, you're headed out there with logic and rational thoughts, whereas people respond emotionally and triggers, and like those are the things that just work. And that's why marketers have to be completely ethical and above the board and find a way to do something different with cliche, you know, because I mean that the person who's, you know, doing the good, you know, conscientious law commercials versus the exploding eagles strobe light thing, you know, which I think is amazing. We blow up an eagle.
If you do that, you should have to enter the courtroom like that. Like this, like when they announce the starting lineup at a basketball game, like the courtroom gets dark in a spot, and now,
and let it be known that I think it's a really great.
I'd hire that guy,
bro. And that also is in those Reddit threads where they're like, "This is so annoying. I'm totally going to hire this person." You know, that totally happens.
Stay tuned as we continue on a very special episode of LAWsome.
The internet can be a cold and unforgiving place. Every day, thousands of law firm websites go unvisited and unfairly labeled as worthless due to the inattention or misguided attempts at do-it-yourself marketing by their owners. Poor optimization and bad design principles have left these sites unable to realize the full potential of the digital landscape they're forced to exist in, and they're now trapped on page 3 of the search results in an endless cycle of bad management, leading to poor results, leading to disillusionment and loss. There's hope for these neglected websites in the form of a digital marketing company focused exclusively on law firms. Since 1999, Consultwebs has helped hundreds of lawyers connect to thousands of clients across the country using sound marketing principles based off an exhaustive track record of marketing campaigns that have already proven to be successful. If your website is underperforming, call Consultwebs at 800-872-6590 and get the clicks it so desperately needs. Please don't let another day full of unvisited pages go by. Take that step and call today for them.
I think just kind of taking it all. Conceive of advertising as a decision, as an awareness vehicle. There are negative and positive connotations to making those decisions. So as a lawyer and a business owner, you need to approach that very calmly, and, you know, you have to have reflection on it. But you also have to understand when you are marketing something in the mass public, people don't behave logically. People don't behave rationally. So when you are advertising and you're just giving them the facts, that might not be enough to drive them to conversion, you know? So you have to kind of question what your assumptions are. And I think the only way that you could do that is to find out what the experience is at your law firm.
Yes.
And so
yes.
My whole thing is experience is your marketing. And that experience is your brand. It's not what you say about your law firm. It's not what you tell people about your law firm. It's what other people tell other people about your law firm. That is your brand. But the only way you could discover that is by doing a really simple client survey. I know that law firms are not asking these questions because we're so focused on driving traffic and awareness. We are missing an opportunity to go through the trash cans of our law firm's processes to find the things that we could actually work on and that describe our unique values. that can give us the ability to create good marketing. And then if you want to do advertising, you want to do a big mass media thing, you want to change the language on your website, you want to change the way you approach social media, you can do it more confidently because you're coming from a place that is engineered from not your thoughts or what you think, but from what your clients have experienced.
And it's important to say why you tell them to go through the trash can, because it's there. It's already there. You're throwing it out. You're throwing out what you need. You have it. You just don't realize it. And Jake, folks, this is coming from a guy who was a marketing director for a law firm. We're not just making this up. This was done. When this guy is saying, the answers are there, you just got to go digging through it. It's important because this is real. This is how you're going to connect. You can't make assumptions. The answers are there.
Paul, I'm telling you, I really, really appreciate that, because when I took over the marketing position, I was completely concerned because I didn't know what made us special. I didn't know how people experienced the brand. I was completely lost. I was coming up with slogans and taglines and special, offers that I kept on thinking that my website was this repository of education and inspiration. And I drafted a 10-question survey, and I asked 100 of our clients. Some had just recently dispersed, some were on the way, some were just starting. And I asked them all the same questions. And it expanded my horizons more than I could have ever imagined. And I could have had focus groups, and I could have asked all our lawyers, like, what do you think makes us special? And I could have gone into everything. But what I had to do was ask all of our clients and call them on the phone. And I got 100 people on the phone. And every marketer right now wants to make decisions based on little to no information and just kind of ride with our assumptions, throw a cohort together and test it. Let's see what happens. The answers are there. I found out that once they decided to hire my law firm, no one ever went back to the website. No one ever looked in our newsletters. There was a problem with communication at a certain point in every case. I discovered that, figured it out, and smoothed that wrinkle out. But I, as a marketing director, wouldn't have discovered it had I not just got this person on the phone. And I asked everybody, how'd you find out about us? And I learned one of our unique value propositions, and that was in my marketing the next quarter. And it completely changed. I changed my website to act as a sales page because I realized these people are never coming back. I thought that I could just give them a little bit and they'd go further in. No one wants to go further in. But I had to discover that. So
with regards to and I think I just interrupted you.
No, it's all good.
You were gonna give us the summation of that. A good lawyer doesn't need a commercial. That's a question that the lawyers should be asking themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to find that answer is to find out, what do your clients think? Where are your clients coming from?
Yep. And most people are saying, what makes us special? You have to ask your clients why they hired you. So I think a good client survey will help you discover your brand, find out how people, discovered you, how they use your website, what they think about your process, how can you improve it. So what we're going to do today is we're going to give you guys a free download. It's the questionnaire that I created for my law firm to discover what made us unique, what made us special. And then that helped me figure out what my marketing was. And then that helped us write TV commercials, because I did TV commercials. I've wrote them, shot them, did the whole thing. And it's a commitment, but I'm proud of what it was.
But it helped with everything, though. I mean, it did help with the TV stuff, but like you just said, it helped with the website stuff, asking, where do you find us? Do you follow up to emails, stuff like that? I mean, it's important. A good lawyer doesn't need a commercial. I think you're looking at something like, does TV make sense in order for me to reach the people who are going to need my help the most?
Well said. Well said. And it's not pro or anti, because there are arguments on both sides. So we're not going to win that argument. But if we are talking about public perception of lawyers, there's so much more low-hanging fruit that we could make use of. Legal tech options, client experience, making the client experience completely barrier-free, making communication better, using really, really low fidelity technological solutions to get your scheduling together, change the way you run meetings. That can have a massive effect on your practice and may even drive revenue. Could you increase diversity in your workplace? Could you shrink the access to justice gap? There's so many other options to pursue, as lawyers trying to change the public perception. One of the examples that I wanted to give is Law and Order gives a completely erroneous picture of lawyers to the general public. Like most cases aren't handled in 22 minutes. Most, it isn't as clean, and those clues aren't always there. And that's not real. And I remember talking to people, like, why is this taking so long? It doesn't take this long on TV. And they said that. And I said, well, it's real life. It's different. There's negative things, but for you as a lawyer to help change the public perception, I think going after TV lawyers who are making a conscious decision to grow their business through advertising doesn't quite make sense. Is it effective for them? Does it work for them? Could it work for you? If not, then find something that can. And the best way to do that is do this client survey.
There you go. You heard it straight from the man himself. And there's no, to me, TV, it doesn't one way or the other. I think a lot of it is kind of shop talk. I think a lot of it is lawyers worrying about stuff that, for the most part, man, the average person just doesn't think about. It's a lot. It's a lot of just do. I don't want to be like just do you, but I mean, you gotta focus on your own thing, man. You got to conquer where you're from. And if TV's part of that, that's great, but it doesn't have to be.
You brought it up earlier in the show, is that it's just a channel.
Yep.
Mass media is just a channel, and TV consumption will change. It is changing. So as we're headed towards the future, because we don't know what it's going to be like, I think the most important thing is for you to figure out what the experience is, base your marketing around that. And then if you have to, get some good advertising principles that can go from digital to analog to online, offline.
Absolutely.
All those things.
Absolutely. Use that survey. Find out about you.
So cool. Well, check that survey. And we appreciate your time on this very special episode of LAWsome. So until next week, we'll see you. God bless America. Okay.
For show notes, links, and info, go to www.consultwebs.com/LAWsome podcast. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay LAWsome.